Welcome to another episode of Do-Gooders. This is the Faces of Newquay series, and today we're speaking to Gemma from Plastic Free Newquay. She gives us some amazing tips about how to make your life plastic free and more sustainable.
Like a stony quiet beginning. Thanks for doing this. We really appreciate it.
It's okay.
I met you at this plastic free event at the library in Newquay.
Yes.
About a week ago.
Yes.
And I heard you talk about the kind of situation and what you're working on at the moment, and
yes.
I thought it'd be a really interesting conversation to have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, pretty much to spread the word so that as many people as possible kind of hear the work that you guys are doing and stuff. So, if you can introduce yourself, Gemma.
Yeah. So I'm Gemma Turner from Plastic Free Newquay. I'm the community leader.
Mm-hmm.
So myself and some hearty volunteers in the community all get together trying to kind of help businesses make better choices in terms of sustainability and particularly single-use plastic consumption.
Mm-hmm.
We also get involved and support on beach cleans locally, litter picks, and we kind of meet as a core group to decide what our objectives are going to be maybe for the year or next 2 years, and what kind of campaigns we're going to be focusing on. So that can be, for example, supporting in collaboration with Final Straw Cornwall, helping businesses get rid of plastic straws and change to either nothing or paper. That's like a little gateway into further conversations.
So what were the kind of objectives that you set about in the last meeting?
Well, quite a few. We were quite ambitious, so I think we need to maybe spread it over 2 years, but some of the core things we want to be looking at for this year and into next year is dog poo bags that are being discarded into bushes, in alleyways, thrown out potentially, out of vehicles, wherever they're ending up.
It's one of those. Since I've been learning more about plastic consumption, it seems to be there's a few really I don't know how to describe it, but there's like a few products that you just wouldn't
Core
even
offenders.
think about, but get used and used over and over again. And you know, when you think how many times a dog needs to be, poo needs to be collected, you're talking like it adds up very, very quickly.
Definitely, and you've got to think that this part of Cornwall, I should say North Cornwall in particular, Newquay itself, is extremely dog friendly, which I mean personally I'm so delighted about with 4 dogs. So it's something that hopefully I can relate on a personal level to, but also try and educate maybe those few that aren't doing it, because it can be repeat offenders, it can be people not realising that just because the dog poo bag has biodegradable written on it means that it's all just going to nicely degrade and away into nature. It's not the case.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to ask you, and maybe we can get into it at some point in this podcast. The difference between biodegradable and plastics made from hemp or some other are there kind of alternatives that
there are, and this is where it becomes an absolute minefield, to be honest. A minefield of choices, a minefield of misinformation, and what we are now calling in the industry greenwashing. So it's become popular to, obviously, which is good, to become more mindful of what's happening with our connection to, nature and the environment and the climate. Great. But also that means the corporates, dare I say, are latching onto that. So anybody who feels they can just slap on the tag of compostable or biodegradable are doing so without maybe putting the full information out to what that actually is defined as. So one of the examples is, compostable alternatives are better than plastics. However, it can depend on what county you live in, So, for example, Cornwall doesn't have an industrial composter. So the compostable alternatives, for example, cups and straws and lids and things like that for takeaway coffees and teas and things, they actually won't compost in your home composter if you are lucky enough to have one. So they are just being incinerated.
And if they end up in the ocean, they definitely
they
won't
don't
compost.
Exactly. Compostables and biodegradables don't break down in the sea. So that's obviously something to kind of really be mindful of, is that and I do feel sorry for the businesses who feel like they're making the right choices because they're being misinformed. Now, if they were, for example, in Devon or Bristol, who have industrial composters, and as a business they've made a change to compostable alternatives, then yes, they go somewhere.
It still needs to make its way to the composter.
Yeah,
anyway.
Absolutely. And I suppose you still got to also look at, it is endless. So you then have to, even if we, for example, got an industrial composter in Cornwall, you then have to think of the carbon footprint of the actual industrial composter, of getting all those collections to the composter from across Cornwall, because there would probably only be one, just like there's only one incinerator in the whole of Cornwall. Again, great in a way, because it's not going in landfill. So again, just as you have one positive, it has a knock-on effect to a possible negative, and it's about informing people of the long-term actual effects of that choice and what choices to make. So it's difficult.
I assume also that if it does end up getting incinerated, it's better to burn something that was made from sugarcane plastic rather than crude oil plastic.
Yeah, that argument can be made, and also how that product, again, you always have to look back to source. So how was that product made? What was involved in the making of that product? So for example, I don't know if these figures are exact, but the last time I did some research, in the US, for example, in 1 year, I think it's 70 million barrels of oil are used just to make plastic water bottles. And on top of that, the 3 times the amount of tap water is used to make the plastic bottle of water. So when you think
that's in the bottle,
it's just insane. But you don't think about that when we've become a world and a society of convenience and speed and and we're all too busy to turn the tap on and carry a reusable bottle. I think it's crazy when you think that bottle of water minimum, if you're lucky, is probably £1. A litre, so double the amount of a general water bottle size that you'd buy, of tap water is 0.001p. So it's also more sustainable for cost, for communities, for, water is a precious resource. And I think that if we're using 3 times the amount of that water to make 1 bottle of water for somebody else to have for convenience, as well as the oil and the production, and then you have the plastic at the end of it, it's just crazy. I just can't get over it.
It's almost, it's one of those perfect examples of how screwed up a lot of
and those figures are just 1 year in one country. It's just unbelievable.
I definitely the more kind of research I do, the more just the numbers are astoundingly high.
Absolutely. It can be quite overwhelming as a consumer or a business or even as an individual when you start kind of looking at the ramifications and the true position as a society and I suppose as a planet that we've got ourselves in. It really is quite staggering and overwhelming, but it's about kind of making the changes as quickly as possible and the right changes. I think that's what it is. It's about spreading and re-educating.
Do you think that a lot of the projects that you're working on through Plastic Free Newquay are making enough of an impact to kind of, I guess, turn the tap off of the plastic that floods into?
I think it's a collective effort. I think we're just one tiny little rung on the ladder, really. A good rung, but just tiny nonetheless. I think we're very lucky in Newquay to have a lot of amazing other environmental groups as well. So Newquay Marine Group do amazing work.
Yeah.
The Odyssey Innovation Project, that's based down in Newquay, where they go out and trawl and take in old fishing nets and then go and actually they're able to recycle them.
Yeah.
Whereas they can't be recycled many places. Just things like that. The lady who makes going back to dog poo bags, the lady who actually makes a dog poo bag holder, so that if, for example, there isn't a dog poo bin bag, a dog poo bin for the bags to be disposed of correctly, especially when you're doing a long coastal walk. As a dog owner, it is annoying having to carry quite a few in your hand, especially if you want to take pictures of the scenery and plus you're looking after your dogs, or even just a walk down the Gannel, for example, around here from Newquay to Crantock, which is a flat walk. There's no bins.
Yeah. Are there alternatives to plastic bags for things like that?
It's difficult, potentially, but I think it would always be some form of bag, I feel, because it needs to be immediately collected, it needs to be durable, it needs to obviously...
It's not one of those you can swap for a paper bag.
No, unfortunately not. Even true biodegradable poo bags, dog poo bags, or veg-ware type alternatives would still have to be disposed of correctly at the end of its use, as it were. So I think the alternative really is that people need to just dispose and be responsible as an individual of their dogs or children or waste, or however you see it. It's about personal responsibility and less of this not in my own backyard mentality, because for example, wind turbines. You may have seen there's a lot of wind turbines around Cornwall, which is great, and solar farms and things like that. But there is a lot of opposition as to where they get put, quite rightly, because there are considerations to be made. Where on the landscape is it going to cause any noise or strobing effects, or is it on a flight path, for example, at Newquay Airport? Is it near certain wildlife that could be hindered by the implementation of a wind farm? But wind farming is one of the most ecologically positive ways to create energy, and sustainable energy at that. And I think we're quite scarily at a point where it's kind of like, if I did a poll on Facebook, for example, I would not be being dramatic if I put, would you prefer a wind farm or death? And I know that sounds really, really, really crazy, but after attending a climate conference on Saturday locally, which was fantastic, and backing up all the research and knowledge I'm learning as I go along my journey as well. You
think people are that opposed to wind farms?
I think people traditionally are opposed to change, full stop, and also a kind of mentality of, but that's the way it's always been done. And also their landscape, some of these places where we're very lucky to live, especially in this county, are areas of outstanding natural beauty. You have spectacular views, 300 miles of the perimeter of Cornwall is coastline, and then you've got all the beautiful countryside in between, and farmland and things like that. But I think what we need to consider is the fact that, most importantly, scientists are realising things are actually happening quicker than they predicted regarding climate change. So physicists, environmentalists, scientists, of all different walks of life are doing lots of studies and are all kind of trying to compile their information. And the general consensus is that we have 11 years to correct what the mess we've got ourselves in. That is it. And that is not kind of going, oh, it'll never happen in our lifetime, or, you know, I don't have children, I won't be around.
I think
it's crazy.
And that's equally...
It's that urgent.
Yeah, and it's equally more frightening, the fact that it's 11 years to change. And a lot of the studies are saying that there needs to be basically a complete overhaul of our energy systems.
Yeah.
And not just in this country, but in pretty much every country out there. Especially a lot of the like upcoming huge populations around India or China, who are kind of just, you know, I guess they're a couple of decades behind us, or like, you know, 20, 30 years behind the Americas or the Europes that have...
Yeah, I mean, you could say that, but also they're being affected by our choices in what you class as the Western world.
Yeah.
So we're meant to be, you know, more advanced, but the irony is that our advancements in one area are causing absolutely catastrophic consequences in others.
I think what I meant was that...
what do you mean, population size?
Well, just that you have these huge populations that... and I've heard in a few documentaries, like the politicians in these countries saying this idea that they kind of feel like the Western world has had 30, 40 years of economic advancement on the back of coal and oil, which is causing all of these issues.
Yeah.
That now we're all kind of gathering together to change.
Yeah.
And they're saying, well, that's great, but a large part of our population is in severe poverty and doesn't even have electricity. So they kind of want to, I don't know, I think they want that advancement first that the Western world had before they start making changes.
Yeah.
Even though you could probably argue that, I don't know, a green renewable energy policy would potentially offer more jobs and get them...
It definitely would, and it would definitely be more sustainable and cheaper for the actual community, village, individual in those more poverty-stricken areas. I mean, it becomes quite a social / political nightmare, really, the more you go into it. And I try not to get too political about it, but unfortunately it's just directly connected. So to make a more equal society where we can all be sustainable together and have better community advantages, and that can be in terms of environmental health, mental health, food sustainability, so there's lack of, so we reduce the poverty and the divide that there are in all of these countries. And to do that, we as communities and as individuals need to take back a bit more power into our own hands and start learning how to do more of these things within our own communities or as an individual, because otherwise the corporates will just come in and charge you twice as much as what it actually costs to produce if you knew how to do it yourself.
Yeah, which is where I think solar energy has that capability of bringing everything down to a community-based level in terms of the production of your energy. You know, if everyone has solar panels on their roofs, then the source of your energy is yourself and your home. Yeah. Whereas if you're being heated by oil and gas, you know, you rely on the costing of some major company who's got to dig this all up and burn it and produce whatever energy they have.
Yeah, so absolutely.
I think it gives the consumer and the community more power to have like a solar based energy system for the town.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just solar. There are some amazing, like sometimes the solution for one town can be different to another town, and that's just within one country or one county. So it can depend on how much daylight hours you have, etc., and what your weather systems are like. So it may be more prevalent to have two solutions, so wind and solar, for example, or one place might have a lot larger wind farm and no solar because of maybe where they are positioned, and bio mass and biothermal energy as well. It could be huge for certain communities as well.
I know. I went to Iceland in the summer, and they have, I think, something like 95% of their energy comes from geothermal, because basically the whole place is a volcano. So and all of their water's heated from the ground. I think with all these things, I think there's been such large resistance because of this idea that the power goes to more community-based sources rather than one massive oil company that can make a ton of money out of producing electricity.
I mean, and there also has to be economical considerations made in terms of making these changes. So, for example, Plastic Free Newquay, where we focus on trying to reduce the amount of unnecessary single-use plastic. We're not against, it's probably risky to say we're not against all plastic, because there is a place in the world for certain durable, reusable, plastics, because it is light, cheap to make, durable, etc. All the reasons why we started utilising it and making it back in the 50s. But when it came out back in the 50s, it was never marketed as a quick throwaway convenience product or solution. It was durable, you'll have this Tupperware box and you'll hand it down to your grandchildren kind of thing. This will last forever. And ironically, it does. But unfortunately, we're not reusing things. We're actually just discarding things. So I think just over time, it's got muddled. And I think where the considerations have to be within the economy and communities, and obviously that all has a knock-on effect, is that if you close down, for example, a plastic factory or something, this is just being really simple, then obviously you have all those people from maybe that area or that are employed there now no longer with jobs. But one of the solutions that is being discussed, obviously, and something that could be a solution to that, is teaching people how to, have other alternative skills. So teach all this is very basic, teach all the plastic factory workers and owners or whatever of those businesses to be able to install wind farms or install solar or fix solar panels or so it's just about kind of considering that by removing one embedded structure within our world economy and how things work at the moment, it will have a knock-on effect. Now, I know we have to do it and we have to make the change and we need to make the change, but that's where as a group like Plastic Free Newquay and all the other amazing groups out there across the world really are trying to get through to the people who A, don't believe this is happening, B, don't believe or don't understand the urgency of the situation we're in as a planet, and C, kind of put their worries aside and kind of reassure them, I should say, as well as re-educate them, that there will be something else to do if we change from oil, or if we move away from that fossil fuel or that process that we've always kind of lived within.
I do wonder with a lot of these things, our kind of economy and a lot of the jobs that we do are based around the idea that you were just talking about, like a throwaway, consumption-driven society.
Culture, absolutely.
Culture. Yeah. And plastic probably being the most visceral example of that. And if you then take away, I don't know, the lifestyle people need to live is to solve the plastic problem is most likely reuse and stop buying full stop. Does that, if you do go down that road, and are there still enough jobs to keep people busy, or?
I think so, because if you look at what maybe those throwaway, like non-reusable items are kind of used for, then again you track it back to source and you think, right, so why was that product made, for what reason, and what problem was it solving? So it could be a container for something, but like a single-use container, or a straw, plastic straw. Well, that was solving a problem originally for maybe certain mixed drinks, or children who found it harder to drink from open glasses and cups and things, but then soon spread to become the norm, as it were, so that we then expected not to drink directly from the container or the glass or whatever. So I think it's about tracking that back and thinking, right, so if we got rid of straws, which are unnecessary, for example, unnecessary items, then those people could be trained in, I don't know, anything from educating, school groups on environmental things. It could be they get trained on how to grow food and where food comes from, and become, horticulturists, or how to replant areas of wildflowers and maintain forests and woodland and things like that, which is what we need. And we need physical people to be on the ground planting these trees at the moment. So, get out the plastic factory and get out planting trees. That's just one really crazy kind of like simple example.
Yeah.
But another one is also learn how to repair things and then teach others how to do it. So, have a repair shop. So again, get out of all those places and start helping people fix things.
I definitely agree. And I think that's...
It's not as simple as that, I guess.
No. Yeah, and I think for me, it's I still don't quite understand how broad it is, because if you translate that idea of, rampant consumerism into other aspects, you're talking, the fashion industry, you lose a lot of high street shops and jobs if people weren't constantly buying brand new clothes. The same with plastic, and you can argue with quite a lot of other things. And the replacement jobs tend to be more sustainable, so require less people because you're not constantly satisfying a consumer need. And I know it needs to go in that direction. I'm just not sure how.
Well, I think again you need to look at why. I think we've just got into it's as simple as it's become a habit. So we don't need all this stuff. You, like as a human being, go back to the basics. What do you need? Or what do you want? You need air, water, food. And hopefully some, sense of community and education in terms of maybe interaction with others and, human contact, I suppose, and things like that. But it's far removed from the world we're in now. And I think it's more of the fact of, if you really, really think and become mindful about what it is and why it is you need that product, then probably most of us could. You can't deny that you don't need all the stuff you have. You don't. People don't need second homes in Cornwall. You only need one home. Like, you don't need 2 homes. You don't need it. No, you need one space that is large enough maybe for you and your initial core family to share, that will be sustainable in terms of housing you, keeping you, you know, clothed, fed, healthy, etc., etc. Now, if everyone were just to go back to basics and learn how to grow their own food, have a sustainable home, only have what they need. But if everyone did that at the same time, then you wouldn't need consumption of other items anyway. And ironically, you would actually also improve other areas of problems that we have within communities and across like different countries. So, you know, to say that one area of the UK has extreme poverty, why? Why have we allowed that to happen? It doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be like that. Not if everyone learns how to become self-sufficient. But I hate to say it, but the key few people that have the most amount of money in the world, I think it's 10 people own 90% of the world's wealth, and it's the 90% that only own 10% of the world's wealth. So the rest of the 90% of the actual population own the rest of the wealth. So you've got to look back and think, well, we need to start making a stand, I suppose. And that doesn't have to be, I'm not saying go out and be aggressive or anything at all, but just to stand in terms of self-educating yourself on what the right choices are, what the alternatives are, how we can do that. Again, I think it's about fighting the system, but in the right way, so that everybody wins, which is probably, some people tell me I'm in a dream world, but you have to hope, and we're at a point where it has to start changing.
I think I just think I'd like to see a way of moving more towards that more basic idyllic lifestyle that you talked about, but without feeling like as a kind of collective society we're not moving backwards. We're still innovating and developing new.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the interesting thing that I know me and Corey have talked about before, like if you had a house built from scratch now, you know, there's loads of really exciting, innovative technology that can make it.
Absolutely.
You know, you can reuse water from your taps that run down into a garden that feeds the plants and so on. Like, there's all these different ideas but the problem is we have an infrastructure at the moment, and you can't just rebuild every house to make it this perfect carbon neutral, open, attractive living space that's better for our health. So it's like a balance between where we are now and realistically what's possible, because I don't think there'll be a point where everyone goes back to growing their own food or...
No, and it's not necessarily that everybody has to do that. It's potentially communities. And when I say communities, it could be county, not just like one town, one village, or one individual. So think about the distance that something travels to get to you, and how much carbon footprint that is, and how it affects maybe the product as well, and the durability of that item, especially if it's like food products or something that's been grown. So if you could have an area where everyone is taught and you all share a patch of land or whatever, or a farmer or whoever in that community, that's their job, but then it gets distributed around locally. It's about kind of making things more local, not necessarily individually grown. That was just one example in terms of it can be done if everybody is empowered with the skills and the knowledge to do so. It can, because you can all share a little patch of land. And for example, going back to like what you mentioned about like new builds and homes and things like that. Well, when you do a survey of how many empty homes there are across the UK, there is actually no need to build new buildings, and it's about kind of refurbing and upcycling and kind of changing and adapting, adapting these old buildings, like here, for example, where we're sat today. You know, we need to check the loft space for insulation. We can try and put solar on the roof. We can then try and look at even who our suppliers are for our electricity potentially and things like that, because you can make choices. So it doesn't have to be from any large firm. It could be from a more sustainable source. So we can all be making changes that benefit as a whole.
Yeah, I'd like to see
more immediately as well.
Yeah, I'd like to see a list of very, very easy changes that will most likely, you know, improve your health as well as your finances, as well as your sense of community.
I mean, some key things you could do immediately is consume less. Just consume less. So, you know, even if you stay in the same job and everything else stays the same, just try and be more mindful about what you're buying. So if you go through your wardrobe, for example, and we kind of touched on fashion or, you know, clothing, you know, either upcycle and reuse something or gift it to somebody who doesn't have that, who it would be useful to, and, you know, or swap shops or something like that, rather than, I know that there's a few people around here that do swap shops, like get-togethers with their friends. So they all bring a couple of items that they no longer need or want or can't fit into, maybe, if they've changed body shape. And then they try and swap amongst themselves who it might be useful to. And rather than maybe going into a store and thinking, it's only £2, £3 for a t-shirt, but the durability of that product may not last you for as long as you think. And the psychology behind thinking that it's easier to buy a £3 t-shirt that was probably made, you know, inappropriately, shall I say, by potentially in, you know, like kids in sweatshops and things like that in other countries. But again, out of sight, out of mind, we need to change psychology as much as our actual actions. So it's about being more mindful. So that's an immediate change. Less consumption, and think about the unnecessary things that you can stop consuming. So again, single-use plastics. So, you know, just take a moment and collect all your reusable bags and make sure you take them to the shop wherever you do your food or weekly shop. Or, you know, find a local refill store. They are popping up. We're very lucky in Cornwall. They're popping up in all sorts of towns. So it was interesting when we did a mass unwrap yesterday at Morrison's. Now, I would say 9 out of 10 people who supported the unwrap to make obviously a point about how much unnecessary packaging there is within supermarkets actually ironically don't always usually shop within a supermarket. So most of us go to our local greengrocers, butchers if they eat meat. Obviously a lot of them don't, because that's one of the things we need to look at in terms of carbon footprint. Refill stores, and a girl made a really good point. She said, I live on my own and the only option for this certain type of rice or grain was a massive 1 kilogram bag in plastic, with plastic tags all over it as well, like sticky tags. And she said, that's why I go to refill stores usually, because then she can just take what she needs. So it's about kind of, food waste is a huge problem within all sorts of communities, which is totally unacceptable and disgusting, really, when you think that you know, when people used to say, oh, there are, you know, kids dying in Africa, you know, when your parents used to say back in the day, oh, eat your veg, you know, there are kids dying in Africa. Well, you don't even have to look that far. There is so much inequality within our own country and our own communities now, let alone across the world, that it's disgusting that we throw away so much food that we waste, that creates such a huge carbon footprint of its own through methane gases and things like that, when there are people starving, I just think you can just be more mindful.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I read about that was, I don't know if this is still up to date, but something like on average, a third of your shopping is food waste. So if you go to the supermarket, it's the equivalent of buying 3 bags of shopping and just leaving one. Putting one straight in the bin and
exactly.
going home.
Buying it and just leaving it on the tills. Yeah.
I feel like we're touching on a lot of different issues though.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's because they're all connected. This is the key point. Climate and environmental considerations are always all connected. So if you can make even the smallest change as an individual, and I think it's about individuals thinking, oh well, what's the point? And it's about changing that mindset. I'm just one person. Well, if everybody thought, oh, I'm just one person, but I will make these changes, think how many people and what effect that's going to have, whether it be slowly or
rather
quickly.
Than the, it's just one straw.
Yeah.
Said
8 billion people daily.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
But I think, because even just in this small conversation we've touched upon 5 or 6 problems that would require quite sizable lifestyle changes. I think it can be quite overwhelming to maybe not know where to start or feel a bit isolated about it, and coming back to the Plastic Free organisation that you're working with, I think just having those initiatives around, I guess, gives people, 1, the information, and 2, a place to come and join in with beach cleanups with other people and not feel so isolated or overwhelmed by.
I think it all starts, and we've always said, myself and some of the key people that I work with, it all starts with a conversation. So whether that be somebody approaching us to ask us our advice, or me having a conversation with somebody who knows more in one area of sustainability than myself, and me learning something, and then me then being able to pass it on, and us all becoming a bit more empowered to talk about the issue at hand. And I think, and not be afraid, like you say, maybe feeling that isolation of, oh, is it just me that thinks like this, or will they think I'm a hippie tree hugging,
and maybe
activist, which unfortunately can be
stereotype. But
stereotype,
maybe and ultimately I think a lot of these choices do lead to a healthier, happier individual.
Absolutely.
And a more connected community. If you take what you said earlier about shopping more locally, I think if you go to the greengrocers and then the plastic free shop and then the local health food shop or something, and you go there regularly, you're more likely to build relationships with the people that work there, which I think is a part of your community. Walking into a shop and they know who you are, and you're back again.
Definitely. I think I touched on it at the Newquay Library event last week, and that was their first event surrounding sustainability and plastic free, opportunity, living event that they'd done, and it was such a great turnout. And one of the things I touched upon there as well was about kind of how it helps solidify the community in a way. So if you come out and join a beach clean, then you might meet people that you'd never would have come across or met before, and you might have been just sat watching TV that Saturday afternoon, maybe on your own, or maybe you don't feel like you can connect with your family or your parents, or you're having trouble at school. But if you start connecting to more like-minded people, you feel less isolated. The same with certain age groups as well. So getting sort of the more elderly, involved and getting outside and meeting one another. A lot of them have lost, partners, husbands or wives or whatever, and are widowed. So, helping eradicate loneliness by actually helping the environment as well. It's like a win-win.
And just getting outdoors and exercising.
Absolutely. So mental health, positivity, having great conversations, humour interaction, being outdoors, having exercise. The list goes on, and at the same time as the end product is that you've actually cleared waste off the beach, so to stop that going back into the sea and potentially harming animals either on the coastline or in the sea. So that's just one example, which is crazy really when you think about it. That's just one example. And secondly, for example, myself, I only moved here just under 2 years ago, knowing no one apart from my husband. So we had no other connections here. And very quickly being able to get involved in something that I'm passionate about, I now have what I feel like is my own community of friends. So it's like a community within a community, if that makes sense. Community squared. And I get to have great conversations and meet people, like yourselves, or that I may never have met if I'd have just gone to work in an office when I first moved here, or if I hadn't joined in at a club, or if I hadn't got involved on a beach clean. And I just think, and it doesn't always have to be talks about sustainability and the environment and things. Naturally, it usually comes to that, probably with certain like-minded groups, but it can be support in other ways when you're having a tough time in one area of your life or not. And I think it all has an amazing knock-on effect to your well-being as a human being. So
I think as much just because I think we're all aware of these as issues, whether it's animal welfare or overuse of plastics, or
Well, you say that we're aware.
Well, no, I think as a general population that now more than ever we're more aware. There's more documentaries about it. There's more conversations about
effect.
There's more conversations about it happening. And I think
definitely.
To be and we also all consider ourselves to be quite like well-meaning humans, I think, as in general. So I think to know that there are issues out there and not feel like you're contributing to the solution and more contributing to the problem, I think can create, if only on an unconscious level, like a bit of a dissonance between your actions and, if you've watched Blue Planet and you're now aware of this, humongous plastic problem in the oceans, and then you're going and buying a single-use plastic bottle of water, I think there'll be a part of you that kind of goes, ooh, maybe this isn't. And I think that just...
It definitely is increasing for the better, absolutely. I've definitely felt and seen a change amongst general awareness with all kinds of different people in all different industries, which is fantastic. But I think it's about also speaking not just to ourselves with those people who are already aware. It's about trying to speak out to the people who, there are certain leaders of the most powerful country that think climate change is a hoax. So need I say more? That is so dangerous and scary. And if you think of all the people that believe that...
Do you actually think he thinks it's a hoax?
Yes.
Or do you think he just says that because he's in bed with oil corporations, or...
No, I think within every society and every group and community of people, you will have somebody, for example, let's say there's 20 scientists saying all the similar things about climate change. There will always be the one that tries to see an argument for the opposite, because potentially, dare I say, they're in the pocket of somebody who it would be an advantage to them and that person to say as such. So I think if you then latch on to those key people who
and that was an actual,
are already biased.
That was an actual strategy set out in a lot of, I don't know whether it applies to England, but in America, a lot of oil and coal lobbyists, or dairy and meat industry lobbyists, actually kind of said, look, we know climate change is happening. Back in the 60s, 70s, we know it's happening, but that's going to seriously affect our bottom line and our business. So we need to spread disinformation about it and get people engaged in a conversation. Is it real or is it not? Rather than
fear mongering as well.
It is real. And it's been scientifically proven that there is man-made climate change since at least the 60s. But because of these kind of false scientists and scientific bodies that have kind of purposely created a conversation around whether it's real or not, which is totally not what we should be talking about. It is real, and we need to now talk about the solutions rather than arguing with Trump about whether it's a thing or not.
I think that a really great quote, and that I saw a picture floating around social media recently, was at the beginning of every disaster movie there's always a scientist not being listened to.
I like that.
And I just think that is nail on the head. It's so true. And I think it's about kind of getting the everyday person. So, I don't know if it'll do me any good to say that I have no background in environmental or sustainability. I haven't done any qualifications, but I'm passionate, I've done lots of research, and I help support the people that do have the knowledge. And if I don't have that information, then I will hopefully direct somebody who maybe is asking a question that I don't know the answer to the right person. And I think that's about how we can maybe spread the right kind of awareness.
So
and create more trust.
And
amongst.
In terms of you think a large part of the solution will be personal changes that everyone can make?
Well, I think it's one part of the solution. I don't think it's the large part, because unfortunately the larger part is making really big dramatic changes on a larger county, community, country scale, and across the world, and then that has to be done in every country.
But I think a lot of that will be consumer driven. It's changing habits. As long as we're aware that there'll be a lot of, like you said at the beginning of this talk, greenwashing from your corporate companies. And we touched upon this in our last podcast with the two chaps that run the vegan events, Cornwall. And we were saying how vegan's become a trendy word. So now you've got some big corporations like Nestle, and which are, in my opinion, probably one of the worst for the planet. Especially in terms of plastic waste, the amount
and palm oil, destroying orangutan habitat.
And now they're just whacking vegan onto packs of shreddies so that they can sell more shreddies to vegan people. So I think as long as we can avoid the big corporate greenwashing like that. Begin to shop a bit more local, then I think it will be consumer. I guess if you've got an educated consumer base, then you can have consumer-led change. As long as we're all kind of...
And the right support networks, like you were saying, whether it be the right...
or even just having local shops. If
the right things available.
If the Good Life, which is the kind of plastic free
zero
shop,
waste.
Zero waste in Newquay, if that wasn't there, I'd find it quite difficult to buy my rice and just fill up a jar or something. I guess we're lucky that Newquay's got quite a good network for that. I'm sure there's a lot of places across the UK where you can't just order a veg box from Riverford or like a local farm or something like that.
Yeah.
And they probably don't have a zero waste shop or something. What are your what changes did you make in your life to kind of realign with this?
So some of the things are that I am more vegetarian than I ever used to be. I occasionally eat fish, but I really shouldn't, because that's like, unless it's on a certain list that's sustainable. It's really hard because I'm from Grimsby, so it's like the hugest fishing town ever, and I have a lot of fishermen in my family, and that's one of the key top plastic waste producers is the fishing industry.
Oh, really?
So it's really difficult for me to have conversations sometimes, because it really goes against like where I was brought up in my culture. And I love fish. However, I am moving more towards a more vegetarian plant, and when not necessarily vegetarian in terms of, I eat things that pretend to be tasting and look like meat, so that freaks me out personally, but a more plant-based sustainable diet, I should say. So it doesn't necessarily have to be vegan, but but that's the choices I'm leaning towards more personally because of the carbon footprint of the meat industry. Secondly, we obviously at home recycle as much as we can, but what we try and do is not purchase products that we have to then recycle in the first place. So we utilise the refill stores, go to the local. I'm quite lucky. We have a local green fruit and veg shop that has all loose fruit and veg out. So we just take our own containers or bags or
where's
netted
that?
bags. That's at Goonhaven.
Okay, yeah.
It's called Mr. Fruity, and they've actually just opened a whole section of their store as a refill store as well. So I sometimes go there, and then sometimes, obviously, in the week go to Good Life. So I'll split it now. So I'm really lucky to have that on our doorstep, sort of Holywell Bay end towards Perranporth. So when you don't eat as much meat and you get all your stuff locally from your local greengrocers, your fruit, veg, and all your grains and things, then we don't really have fizzy drinks or anything bottled. We just drink tap water and have my refill bottles. And I sometimes have loose. Another good one was swapping from tea bags and things to loose leaf tea. And having teapots and
the metal thing,
strainers and things. So that was one thing. I always take my reusable bottle and mug everywhere. In fact, I purposefully bought a backpack that would have room for all my different reusable items. Always carry another reusable bag inside the bag I carry around. So again, I've changed from maybe, having handbags and this, that and the other, maybe as a female, and I have a key backpack that fits all my reusable stuff and suits my lifestyle. That is just one, I suppose, small change as an individual I've made, plus the plant-based diet thing, and shopping more locally. And with shopping more locally, we actually create less food waste. Because obviously you always have a little bit, whether it be peelings or whatever. Now, we have a home composter as well. Because we're lucky enough to have a garden and a big enough space for a composter. Now, something that's changing within Newquay and Cornwall, in terms of council-led, is next year is going to be a big year for change from April onwards, supposedly. So we'll see if it's being implemented. So the key changes are there's going to be your general waste will only be collected every 2 weeks. Your recycling will now then go to weekly instead of fortnightly. And there will be a food waste box collection. So they'll provide you with a food caddy waste box, so that for all the people who live in maybe flats and apartments who maybe can't have a big home composter, they can actually put their things in there.
We don't even have anyone that comes to collect our recycling.
Oh,
like
right,
we have to take it to
the recycling centre,
the car park in up the top
of
Mount Wise,
and
like we just
well, that's something that I've heard. It can be different in different like little areas, even of the same town. Again, there needs to be more kind of awareness and availability to make the right choice and do the right things. So I know somebody mentioned quite a few times to me, there's no recycling points in the centre of Newquay. There's only bins. You know, in a lot of places now where you go, you have the recycling section and the waste section. So again, you as a individual, you can hopefully make the right choice. Now, again, this is where making one decision or one positive change sometimes then has a knock-on effect that you have to consider as a whole before making the right change for the community. So, just for example, if we just campaigned and crowdfunded for loads of recycling points or something, if the council's saying they couldn't afford it, if we actually provided that funding and installed them, then it's then who's going to collect it, will it be disposed of correctly, how far is it being taken by those collection services. You know, you can't assume that it will be sent to the Newquay recycling centre because they might not win the contract, or that might not be where they are allowed to drop it off. Cross contamination of recycling, unfortunately, is huge. Even down to things like people popping, black plastic in their plastic collections. Well, unfortunately, at the moment, black plastic can't be recycled. So, in my mind, it shouldn't be created because, the minimum, if you're not going to make any of the changes to try and stop using anything that has black plastic, there you go, there's a top tip as well, because as it's sorted on, and before it gets to manual sorting, it's sorted by lasers, and it can't pick up black.
Doesn't detect it, does it?
Which is really irritating. So I just think, well, all those products and all those companies that are using it, we should lobby even if they're not going to change away from plastic, don't use black plastic. So at least we can recycle. Like, as consumers, I have the choice to recycle it. Now, on a personal level, that's another thing I've done, is I make choices as per the company or the product. Now, there's not a lot of times where I have maybe things that come from larger companies anymore, because I go to the refill station for my food and local greengrocers and things. But you do occasionally, especially when you run a business, you might get a pack of biscuits for a meeting or something, and you just kind of forget. And it's about, again, being always mindful. So which company or which packaging of biscuits am I getting? Is it biscuits individually in a black tray that can't be recycled, wrapped in plastic? Are the biscuits individually wrapped inside that packaging? What company are those biscuits, just for example, where do they come from? Like palm oil and
I think
where's their packaging come from? So it's like so multi-layered.
Yeah, well, one of the things I wanted to ask you was, like, in my personal life, I pretty much live the same way you, almost word for word. We've made pretty much all of those changes, but then my business that I run I've for some reason, maybe I'm just catching up with that side, haven't made as many changes to that aspect because there just seems to always be something else to think about.
And I have been told by other businesses locally that making more sustainable choices actually costs them more as a business, which is really sad. But
what do you have any suggestions on things that we could?
For businesses, because that's one of the key things we actually do for Plastic Free Newquay. So we try and get businesses on board to make a minimum of 3 positive changes, sustainable or move away from plastic. so that they can become what we call a business champion in the area to kind of lead the way for others. Because so that's something we do.
Newquay received Plastic Free status.
Coastal state, yes.
Okay, and that's based on the number of businesses that's created in conjunction with Surfers Against Sewage, and they set the targets for each plastic free community. So they go off actual what do you call it? How many people? Population. So the population of the town versus how many businesses are that they log that are in the town, and then they create a percentage thing and tell you, right, okay, so if you get a minimum of, for example, Newquay's was 12 businesses, to make minimum of 3 changes within those businesses for better sustainable choices or move away from plastic, then we can grant you plastic free status. Now, I think that was great, but I always see that as a start. I think personally, and this is nothing against Surfers Against Sewage, that targets are there to be like broken, and that was a minimum requirement to have a plastic free status. Now, I think the problem with saying, oh, Newquay's got plastic free town status is that it doesn't mean that everywhere's plastic free, and I think this is the problem that we're facing, is that if we start declaring these kind of things, people think they can come to Newquay and everything will be plastic free. It's not the case. We got 12 businesses signed up. Confused me a little bit.
So
when it first came out.
Yeah. So so I see it as that's just the starting point that started again. More conversations, maybe more awareness, more press, things like that.
Yeah.
But we want more.
What were the kind of 3 changes that most of the businesses made?
It's obviously dependent on the business. So for hospitality type pub and bar and hotel type businesses, it could be not serving plastic straws and only having paper available, and even then not giving them out freely. It would only be on request.
Yeah.
Another one would be their packaging solutions and their suppliers. So obviously again, some of these, that's why I suppose 12, although it sounds low, it did take us a while, because the changes that we're asking some of these businesses to make are quite large, and take more research for the business to do. So for example, that business I mentioned, where there's 2 businesses, one was paying for a commercial recycling contract for their cardboard to be removed, and there was a business that was getting cardboard delivered. So we then kind of introduced them, so that now we've closed the loop to become more circular economy. So that company just gives it to the other company. So it doesn't even have to go to a recycling plant. And I think that's something else that I didn't mention the whole time we've been talking, is circular economy is such a great model to be able to base kind of future living on. So that was one example. So basically, instead of things being collected at curbside, which is all very good, everyone recycling, collected at curbside, driven in a big truck, like probably diesel or oil truck, driven to a plant, sorted, shredded, taken, maybe some things sent to another selection, then perhaps melted down, remade into something else, the fumes.
Remade into the same.
Or remade, into the
back
next
into
lot
a
of,
bottle.
back into more products that are only going to be recycled again. And that's something else to actually just really quickly bear in mind, is that there is no universal standard for plastics in terms of ingredients. So there are certain plastics that can only be recycled like once or twice. So when it says recyclable, it doesn't mean for life. So that product cannot be kept being recycled. There'll be a certain point in its lifetime or lifespan that will just be burnt or thrown away in landfill, because the quality of the grade of the plastic will no longer be sustainable to be used. Now, the amount of different chemicals and ingredients, like I said, or compounds, whatever you call them, that are in all different types of plastic, even within the same industry, like biscuits or I don't know, film packaging around food or something, can actually be different from one item to another, even though they look exactly the same.
Yeah.
So it becomes very complicated at recycling level to be able to sort and reuse, and actually for it to be sustainable. So if we can cut that out in the first place, whether it be back at source from consumer level, but if not, then then one of the changes as businesses and consumers is let's try the circular economy model, so that if I had lots of boxes that I was getting rid of, then it goes to a company that were originally bringing in boxes or paying for supplying of boxes.
Or jars or...
jars, glass, bottle, things like that.
I think just one point related to what you're saying about the chemical structure. I think that isn't that, from what I understand, that's one of the most I don't know, I guess the biggest downfall of using plastic is that if they go into the ocean or degrade somewhere, or even just having, your water in a plastic bottle, there's going to be a kind of chemical overflow into your water, or
there's a lifetime.
Or if there's marine life that's eating your plastic, like fish or so on, it's going to end up a part of the fish, which is something you eat, and then you're getting these chemicals absorbed into your own body
definitely.
as well.
I think that's something we haven't maybe touched on, because obviously the subject's so broad, we could literally talk all day, well, longer, but is the fact that plastics unfortunately are already microplastics in particular are already part of our food chain. There's literally no getting away from it now, unless we go to plant-based food models, and then stop our consumption and creation of the plastic in the first place, and start cleaning up, collecting and then cleaning up everything that's out there. It will take a long time for the environmental change to recover. It's not saying it won't do, I'm not all doom and gloom, it will do, but we need to make really quick changes now. So they did a study recently of diving to the greatest depths of certain oceans and seas and things, and got little microorganisms and shrimp and all sorts tiny little creatures, and microplastics were in them. So again, it's the fish eat that, bigger species eat those fish, including ourselves, and then even things like what if you do eat meat, for example, what are the cows and pigs being fed, especially if they're not out grazing on natural kind of organic grassland. If they're kept within pens or whatever, are they given, some pigs for example are given food waste, like human food waste, communities trying to do good there, but you've got to think that what those pigs are then eating is the food waste, and potentially things that already have plastic in, or microplastics in, and it enters it that way, chemicals that they're being given as well.
Plus just in general, I think animals nowadays, especially if they're reared in pretty horrible conditions, get pumped full of a lot of other, not so nice chemicals anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Like antibiotics and so on.
And I think, I'm not saying this massively because I've done no research in it, but I think it's recently we were watching, for example, Stand Up to Cancer Bake Off last week, my husband and I. And one of the statistics that they said on the kind of informational cancer section of the programme was that 1 in 2 people now will be affected by cancer. And me and my husband looked at each other and we thought, oh my gosh, that if that's true, obviously, which I don't deny, it probably is. It means that either myself, in our lifetime, myself and my husband potentially will get cancer. Or suffer from some form of cancer. Now, could that be an effect, direct effect, the increase of, cancers and things, can it be a direct effect of what we're eating and consuming? Personally, I think so.
I think so as
how
well.
can there not be an effect from all the chemicals and all the microplastics and everything that we're all consuming and is now getting into our food systems and ecosystems and our food chains? Like,
even from a vegetarian diet, if you're buying your grains or veggies from places which have been sprayed with Monsanto Roundup or something like that, then you're probably going to have carcinogens ending up in your oats or something. And another great reason why you should source your veggies and stuff from local organic farms.
Absolutely, it's just like, the more you look into it, the more you think, oh yeah, it's simple really. The solution's simple really. It's just changing everybody's habits. That's what's difficult, and the knock-on effects of changing those habits
within 11 years. And there can be no more, we'll do a 10-year study or a 5-year study. It's so critical, the core temperature of the earth at the moment, that we're trying not to reach above. I mean, all you have to do is look around and think that this time last year it was snowing. And 2 weeks ago, we had the hottest February on record for that week. The same week the year before that it was snowing. Yeah, I'm always hesitant.
Like that.
I'm always hesitant to use examples like that
of weather.
Yeah, because then the next time it snows, everyone's talking of like, oh, it's not getting warmer. But I think it's more important to say like,
well, no, because climate change isn't always about it getting warmer. It's about the extremes of weather.
But I think it's more important, rather than to say like it's a beautiful sunny day today. I think it's more important to say, we've had something like 7 of the hottest years ever. In the last 7 years. That's
a greater scale for people to compare.
That's 7 years of kind of I guess hotter and more consistently hotter temperatures.
Yeah, and it's also about kind of looking at the kind of how we as a species, I suppose, survive within these more extreme conditions. So, access to water and food. I mean, recently in Australia, there was a species of bat. A third of the whole population of the species died in one night because of extreme temperatures. It was too hot for this species of bat. They all just dropped out the trees. It was like really apocalyptic, people were saying. And then freezing floods. They've lost something like 700,000 heads of cattle over in Australia, like a week later.
And probably wildfires.
I mean, look at California. All these Hollywood stars, suddenly it's on everyone's doorsteps, literally. So everyone's communities are burning.
But I think, in a way, yes. But I think, as with a lot of these problems, as kind of middle class, Western, nice cities, we're going to be way less affected than some of the, I guess, poorer communities that a single drought would, potentially wipe out their food for, that year or something like that. Or if their crops fail, then they're in a lot more trouble than if.
I think it's the knock-on effect. So, even because of the infrastructure of where we live with imports, exports, things like that. I know that Norway recently lost something like 60% of their crops for the first time ever because of irregular temperature within their country. Now, I can't remember the exact figures, but basically we import like 40% of our fruit and veg or something like that from Norway. So although it may be in like a farming community over in Norway or in Australia or wherever, then actually that was where at the moment our infrastructure gets XYZ from.
Yeah, but again it's the scale, because I know that there was a lot of I think it was last summer and the summer before, there was really extreme temperatures in Portugal and Spain, which led to a shortage of avocados or something like that. And for like, you know, it was tricky to get your avocado fruit, which is like the most, you know, middle class problem you can have. It's like, I really struggled to get my avocado, or you had to pay an extra £1, you know, or something like that, which isn't such a big problem as you know what it will be in a lot of other places. But then, you know, something like, you know, we think, well, I don't personally think, but there's a lot of people out there that think there's a refugee problem at the moment. When you start having huge areas of land that become inhospitable because of climate change or flooding or drought, you know, then you're going to see some
mass migration, absolutely, on a massive scale, and then people are going to regret not putting that wind farm up in that field. Like, seriously, I think people don't realise the huge, like you say, knock-on effect worldwide that one thing in somebody's backyard can have on your own, you know, life and infrastructure and things like that. And we need to take responsibility more of one another, not just as a country or whatever. You know, unfortunately we are experiencing sad times, I would say, and it does seem quite, you know, overwhelming with all the changes ahead, whether that be the political environment or climate change and things, especially when you become more aware of it, and like you say, you feel almost isolated. And I use the word despair as well. But for all of that, there are amazing changes we can make for the better in time that will help. And I think it will have a positive knock-on effect in terms of community strength and technological advances, like you're mentioning, and things like that. And just working smarter, not harder, if that makes sense, as people. I hope that, but then I'm an eternal optimist.
Do you think there's some value in thinking like, let's crack on as we are, and there's going to be some, you know, bacteria created that eats plastic, or there'll be some technology that solves the problem?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's people who maybe feel like they don't, you know, they have bigger things to worry about right now in my life than you telling me not to use this plastic packaging and me to take my own bag to the supermarket or not shop at a supermarket, whatever. And that's the large population of people we're trying to create awareness within, is that unfortunately it will happen in your lifetime, and we're already on a path where if we don't, you know, it's almost unstoppable. We can, but I think thinking that something will be created by the scientists that you jeer, ironically, sometimes, and say that you don't believe in, well, who do you think's creating these things that you think are going to come out that's going to magically solve everything? The same people that are telling you that it's too late, or it's going to be too late if we don't make changes. So I think it's kind of like, I think worryingly a lot of people think that people have been speaking about the ozone layer and climate change since I was, you know, young or whatever. And I think people do think that somebody else will fix it, or some miracle invention will sort it. I don't think they realise that we as a society and as a species have to change. And I think
even if that is what you believe, like, you know, there's a load of other benefits from, like we said before, making these choices. And exactly. You know, why risk it? You know, if all it comes down to is making a few lifestyle choices that will potentially bring you more into the community, definitely saves you a lot of money. You know, I don't really buy any clothes new or anything anymore, and my diet and stuff is a lot cheaper to support. And I guess if you bring your own coffee cup, you get 20p off or something like that.
Yeah.
I think as a lifestyle, it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Which I think is quite a motivating factor.
I hate to use the word lazy, but it's kind of, it's laziness. And we've all been there where because at the moment where we are recycling at my home, I have like 4 different things. Now, not everyone's going to take the time like I do to sort through every single different thing, remember to pick out what I can't put in each individual bag, and then wash it out, rinse it, make sure it's not contaminated with food or something like that. So down my street, I probably only see 4 houses with recycling bags outside on recycling day, because people probably, I hate to say it, it's easier to throw in the bin and tidy your area, as it were, in your house and your worktops, especially if that's being collected once a week as opposed to twice a week. So you've got to think of, like,
but almost,
we need to make it easier for people and more aware.
I think that,
if we don't produce the stuff in the first place, then they won't buy it.
True, but then I think that also talks to I don't know, the lifestyle, not choices, but that people live. If you are working 8 or 9 till 5, and then coming home, and by the time you've got home, it's time to cook dinner, and then it's time to, and then you've had a long day, you've cooked dinner, it's 8 o'clock, and you just want to sit and watch
you
some
might
TV.
have children or
you've
dogs,
got to put your kids to bed, take the dog for a walk. Like you can easily.
Yeah, it's the last thing. Yeah, and I totally have been there where I have a stack of things on my worktop and I just go, ugh. It's kind of, I get quite irritated that I have to wash it up. But then I think, and then I start seeing it as an opportunity, and I think, right, why have we got so much this week? What did we buy that we shouldn't have bought? And and again, I think it's about bringing it back to individual responsibility, because I think also a lot of people think it's like the government's responsibility to fix as well, rather than on a personal level. Well, what do we pay this person for? What do we pay that person for? I hear that a lot, but it's about kind of saying,
which in a way they should be doing more.
Oh, they have a responsibility, but it's not the only. They're not the only person that's responsible, is what I'm saying.
And I guess nowadays it's a lot more like consumer based. The problems come a lot more from business rather than from government. Absolutely.
I mean, one other example which we all discussed at the climate change conference on Saturday was, for example, most people or most cars on the road nowadays are leased rather than owned.
Okay.
So because then they can trade it in and the next year get the next newest model. Now, why aren't those cars electric? And why isn't there a subsidy for electric cars to be leased? So that was a really good point. Secondly, why are you encouraging people to do that? The same with phone contracts. I remember when I first got a mobile phone, that Nokia, that little brick, lasted me for years. The battery was good, but I know that obviously it's more like a little handheld computer now, and I do work in digital marketing, so I'm sure I will get a lot of flack for saying, well, how would you do your work then? Fine, they're amazing tools. They are an amazing tool, but do you need a new one every 18 months when your contract is up? Excuse me. I mean, I don't think so. I think you're made to think you need one, and that you're missing out on some new,
upgrade.
Yeah, exactly. And do we know really what's happening to when you? I mean, unfortunately, we have quite a lot of phones that we've kept at home, because even I'm looking into where do I dispose of it correctly, where can it go?
Especially a lot of the chemicals that are in batteries and
lithium batteries and things like that. Same with other items that unfortunately they're made cheaper, so that it's actually from a consumer point of view and like a monetary point of view, it's cheaper for example, when we were moving in here, we didn't, but it would have been cheaper for us to go out and buy a new fridge than to find an old one and do it up, or and if we wanted to do one up and we didn't have the skills, where could we take it? Nowhere. Who fixes fridges? Because it's easier to get a new fridge. I don't even want to get started on things being built to fail. And yes, absolutely. This is the problem. It literally is a Pandora's box. So you could say Plastic Free Newquay is our community title, like for our group. But really, we cover so many more topics, and that's why we liaise with lots of different groups, and everyone kind of works collectively together. Because we're trying to prove in a way the circular model in terms of even just awareness and education and resources with one another, but also it opens up a door into lots of other knock-on effect issues and things. It's not as simple as just saying, well, don't use it then. Don't make plastic. People will say, just don't make it then. Well, I totally agree. I hope we can get to somewhere where we don't rely on it as much, but there has to be considerations of what you do with those people or that area or whatever. If you do that.
Well, kind of what I wanted to kind of finish on is just to hear from you. I guess, what are these other organisations and where can people find out about them? And then how can they, just if you have some ideas on what people can do to like come along to a beach cleanup or something like that.
I try and share all the local things going on in Newquay on the Plastic Free Newquay Facebook page. So if you click on the events tab, there's lots of different ones that maybe I'm not, or we're not as a group necessarily hosting ourselves, but we're supporting, or we're just kind of advertising for them, really creating awareness. So all the beach cleans for the year for the 2 local beach clean groups are on there. On top of that, there are additional activities and events going on, and just kind of have a look and join in on the ones that you're able to, and things like that. We often share lots of other groups, like I say, events or information. So some of the great groups and businesses that in Newquay at the moment are, for example, the Newquay Marine Group. So again, if you follow their social media and maybe sign up to their newsletters as well, they send out information. Secondly, like you mentioned, the Good Life, which is our local zero waste store. There's also Incredible Bulk, which is a mobile zero waste store that comes to Newquay Community Orchard once a week. And Newquay Community Orchard are doing incredible things for creating awareness and workshops and activities and just incredible. And that's not just things grown in the ground. They do like woodwork courses and all sorts of stuff. And then Newquay Beach Care is the local beach clean group, and Fistral Beach Clean. They're actually run by the lady who runs Newquay Marine Group. So again, you kind of get to see quite a lot of similar faces and people. It's funny.
And I hope, hopefully we'll cover a lot of these guys in the podcast
absolutely
series. Because that's one of the reasons for doing this, is to draw attention to the local groups and businesses that you can support with your...
Absolutely. I'm going to be trying to speak with Newquay Bid further since I've become the new community leader, just to see how we can maybe get more information on there, whether it be website or information they send out and social media and things. Because even I didn't know the extent of all the things available to go to in Newquay. There wasn't like a central place.
Will you be doing any work with like boardmasters or because I can imagine that could be a potentially a really like great place to raise awareness and publicity, because there's such a focus on it, and I'm sure the amount of waste they make in, I don't know, was it 3 days, 4 days? Is probably humongous, and if it might be quite an impactful.
Yeah, definitely. Boardmasters are doing really great things to become more and more sustainable as a festival. They've been doing it for a while. They liaise with Surfers Against Sewage and meet with lots of local environmental groups and neighbourhood planning groups and things each year before each festival, and also review the years before and things like that. Down on Fistral, because there's 2 sections of Boardmasters, down on the Fistral Beach section, Surfers Against Sewage and Plastic Free Newquay have a stall and a stand, as do lots of the other groups we mentioned today. So there's always stands out where we're chatting to people and letting people know what's going on. I think the thing with Boardmasters is, as fantastic as it is a platform to raise awareness, and they're very good at doing so, and they have actually their own, I think, charity or grant now that people can apply for, and they're doing a lot more with the community and across Cornwall, which is fantastic. But it's also to bear in mind that it does attract more tourists. So it's great to create awareness and have conversations with people who are there for the festival, but we also want to have more of a social central place for the community and to know what's going on all year round. Not just maybe at those events. Totally a fantastic place to create awareness and have brilliant conversations, and Boardmasters are very much behind becoming as sustainable as possible, and speaking to all their stall holders and things like that. But it's definitely a great platform, but hopefully we'll get to a place where we can kind of link up all these groups together. One of the ideas is to have a central planner on the Plastic Free Newquay website, which is what I'm working on. So you can just click on a month and it'll show you all the local things with all the different groups, and you just click on the event and it'll take you to that particular page's event. So that's being done at the minute. So that's one solution.
I'd say to anyone listening, like, definitely follow the Plastic Free Newquay Facebook page.
Yeah, definitely, because we basically promote and share everything that's going on locally, even if we're the ones not obviously hosting directly the event. We support as much as we can of all the other local groups and try and become a bit more of a central hub to let people know what's going on. So and follow all the other groups. Get on newsletters, get on their social. So that's probably the best way to do it. And go out and make some changes as individuals and start today.
Definitely, Well, thanks for doing that.
You're welcome.
That was really nice.